that, but then it looks like Dylan is coming in.
Okay.
Let's do just do our kind of check-ins.
Do we know if Mary will be able to join us this evening?
I don't know whether Mary will be able to join us. Did she say anything to you, Dylan, about joining us?
She did accept the meeting, so I thought she was going to show up.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and just for reference, I am double booked tonight. I have a foster parent meeting, so
Okay.
I'll just leave the meeting running. And in about 30 minutes, I have to start driving to it. Just FYI. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Here's Dan.
And Dan just got in. Oh, good, great. So we have our quorum. Welcome.
All right.
Thank you. Yeah, so sorry I was a little late. I'm at my brother's house in Eugene, and we're trying to get hooked up to the internet. So.
Sure, great.
No worries.
So Susie, the guy in the white hoodie is Dylan Digby, and he's the assistant city manager. And the guy in the other blue sweater is Dan Reeser, who is a member of the Sustainability Advisory Board. So we just have, I think I might as well call the meeting to order. It's 6:05, and we need to just kind of go through different elements of the agenda before we kind of reach out to Susie and have her presentation. Did everyone have a chance to read through the minutes?
I did.
Yeah.
Any corrections or changes?
Not for me.
Okay. Is anyone willing to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
And I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor, raise your hands. Okay, thank you. And there are no folks from the community to make public comments, so I think we can move on to just check-ins. So who would like to begin?
I'll volunteer.
Go ahead, Mike.
Okay.
Yeah, so Greg and I had an opportunity to meet with the incoming city councilors this past week, and so that was nice to get introduced to them and to have some conversation about the goal setting document that we put together at the end of last year. So looking forward to working with both Scott and Lou. And another thing to add is wanted to thank Dylan for helping get the natural gas data to us. So we now have natural gas data for all of the city buildings over the past 3 years. And I think that would satisfy our need for a baseline against which the 2040 emissions reductions goals could be set. Perhaps there's some way that we need to make that a little bit more official, but maybe we can have that conversation later on, but happy to have that in our hands.
Excellent. Thanks, Dylan, for making this happen.
Thank you.
It's been slow in coming, so it's great to finally begin to collect this data.
Well, yeah, Mike and Victoria did a lot of good work too to get us there. So thank you.
Good. Yeah. Well, I could go next. Just briefly, I did have a chance to go over to the Lake Oswego Sustainability Network's resource fair on Saturday, and they had probably about 15 different groups there, and was very impressed with just the variety of people who were there. Nicely, I ran into a former student of mine who is running the Lake Oswego High School Environmental Club, and I hadn't seen him in 20 years. So he said he was actually going to be teaching a class on sustainability, drawing upon a lot of stuff in the class that I had taught when he was at Lewis and Clark 20 years ago. So it's a nice kind of sense of things carrying on. So that was a good surprise.
That's great.
Yeah.
Let's see, I guess I can go next. Let's see, I worked with Victoria in the Westland Community Garden cleanup last weekend. That was a lot of fun, kind of a biannual thing we do. That's there at Field Bridge Park. So we did that. And then I will be helping out this weekend for Earth Day, manning one of those booths, talking. I believe that's at the Ale House,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And yeah, so I'll be running the booth about related to the community garden here in West Linn. So that should be fun. And then, of course, I worked on drafting that letter regarding the I-205 toll project. I emailed it out to everybody. I've received comments and edits, which I welcome very much. And thank you guys for doing that. So I'm in the process of putting those in. And Greg, is that a separate agenda item, right?
This is a
Or
separate agenda item. Yeah.
yeah. So we'll go into that later. So, but anyways, that kind of kept me busy for a little while. So
I can imagine. And Longini, we have, as a separate agenda item, your whole effort to create a dashboard as well. So we can talk more about that if you like at that point.
Okay, yeah, I can wait. So I have just charities updates here with respect to Rosemont. With Rosemont Ridge, the initiative for the Earth Week was going on with charities ideas with respect to, food audit or, adopting no idling campaign. And the message was sent to all the teachers about any help that Eco School Network would be, able to provide them to execute the Earth Week well. So there were some teachers who wanted some gardening tools and something respect to for their small garden that they are planning to implement as part of their Earth Week activities. So the discussion and help were like given to those teachers who asked for support to enable the activities that happen at school. So they do have some plans, every day with respect to children, collecting old clothes or donation of old clothes or good items, or there were like multiple activities that's been planned. I do not exactly know what kind of activities were planned, but the Rosemont Ridge Middle School is, working towards this Earth Week. And tomorrow I'll be giving the pamphlets to all the Westland 8th Street Avenue businesses in person. So I'll be handing over to because a charity since she's out of town, and so tomorrow I'll be picking up the flyers from her place to distribute to all the businesses in the Westland Avenue.
Great. Thank you.
William Old Drive. I do not know the exact name of it, but I'm getting used to the names.
Right.
But it is the 8th Avenue, I know for sure.
Uh-huh. Good. So what flyers were those?
It is for the Saturday event that we are planning to have with respect to Earth Day at
Okay. Good. So the ones that Dylan had designed. Good.
yes, right.
Good. Dylan, do you have any news to report?
Yeah, I do actually. We had 2 solid half days of goal setting with the council. Had their goal setting this week. Really productive. Really, everyone was kind of pretty well aligned. It was really good. The main, I think there was like 8-ish main topics that came out of it. There was waterfront visioning, and each of these have a bunch of things underneath them, but just the overarching things were waterfront visioning, police review and recommend committee, getting that going, an indoor rec / civic center, improving transportation in the city, and what else do we have? Highway 43 visioning, and some things about the drinking water system. And then there was one topic about environmental protection and sustainability in city operations. And under that was a number of things like LEED certification of new buildings, electric vehicles, looking at the integrated pest management system and use of things like Roundup in the parks. Reduced use of gas-powered equipment came up, and possibly looking at a budget for a consultant to do at least some, just help us in some ways, to kind of target some efforts.
Great.
What else? And then talking with the Planning Commission about some water resource area code, and then SAB and CCI involvement was discussed. So it's kind of more of a brainstorming. They all need to be packaged still and brought back to the council for like formal approval, and kind of making them a little more actionable and clear. And so it's not, the process isn't done, but yeah, a lot of good stuff there.
Good. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Great. Well, I'd like to invite Susie Peterson to share with us information about the Backyard Habitat Program, which has been going on in West Linn for a number of years and really provides an important service in terms of creating a habitat for wildlife in our area, as well as just supporting native plants. So, Susie, please share with us more about the program and whatever you would like to let us know.
Thank you so much, Greg. Yeah, it's really nice to meet everyone. I've presented before the Sustainability Board in the past, but it was pre-COVID and a lot of new faces in the group for me. So it's really nice to meet you all and to have a chance to kind of catch up and get back to forming, to like having a relationship with you all, like having a partnership. So this is really wonderful. Let's see, I have some slides here to share, and I'm curious if, so Greg, you mentioned that you were in the program, just so I kind of know my audience here. Is anybody else in the program as well?
Our house is in progress.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, great. Good. Well, I'll have a pitch at the end for those of you who aren't in the program yet, but I'll save that till you've heard my pitch. That's wonderful. Okay, so I'm gonna keep this a little, there's a lot that I could share. And Greg, I think that Bethany joined for one of the educational series in February, if I remember right. And so that's, I think I noticed that on the board's webpage. And so today I'm going to give kind of a quick overview, but if you would like more information, I'm sure she did a really great job with that presentation. So feel free to watch that, or you can always give me a call or email me, and I'm happy to share more as well. Okay, let's see. Is it okay if I share my screen then to share the slides?
Dylan, yes, Dylan, can you do whatever needs to be done?
It looks like I might be able to do it here.
Great.
Yeah, you should be able to do it. There you go.
Oh,
Does
great.
that work?
I see it now.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay. Yeah, and Dylan, what time would be a good cutoff time? Or sorry, Greg, what time would be a good cutoff time here?
Probably about 7:28 or thereabouts, and leave a few minutes for questions afterwards.
Or like 6:28?
Yeah, 6:28. Yeah, 6:28.
Okay, because I can go to 7:28 if you want me to.
No, that's okay. Right.
Okay. Right. So Backyard Habitat Certification Program. We are a partnership between two local nonprofits. I work at Columbia Land Trust, which is based up here in Vancouver, Washington, but works across the 4-county region: Clark County, Multnomah, Clackamas, and Washington County. And the other organization is Portland Audubon. So together we co-manage the program, and it's a really, really great collaboration. It's working really well on pulling on the strengths from each of the organizations. So I'm one of the co-managers, and then there's a second co-manager at Portland Audubon as well. And here's a little bit about our organizations, both nonprofits, both within the conservation world. The Land Trust has about, I think we're at about 56,000 acres now along the Columbia River that we steward. And so it's very much like a stewardship focused nonprofit in terms of restoring, like actually like on the ground restoration of properties specifically that impact the temperature and health of the Columbia River. But we do also have some properties that that we're restoring along the Tualatin River, and I believe a few along the Clackamas River as well. And then Portland Audubon, you may be familiar with. They're located up in the West Hills in Portland. They've got a wildlife rehabilitation center and some really great trails around there. They have lots of different things going on there. They've got lots of ways for folks to engage, like summer camps and so forth. So the mission of Backyard Habitat is to provide tools, resources, and recognition for gardening sustainably and creating wildlife habitat. And I'll go into more how like wildlife habitat is a big part of it. That's kind of our pitch because a lot of people are drawn to birds and supporting wildlife, but there are many other facets in terms of environmental benefits. So I'll go into that here in a little bit. But the program was created in 2006, so we've been around for quite a few years. And over the last few years, we've really grown the program throughout the region. So now we're in Clark County, Clackamas, Multnomah, and Washington. And we are now up to 10,500 participants. So we're getting about 1,400 new participants coming on board each year. The way the program works is that when someone signs up, we ask for a small donation or a small fee, and that's the only time we ever ask for any money. And even that's a sliding scale. We don't want cost to be a barrier. We recognize that that is a barrier, so we're trying to remove that barrier by making it a sliding scale. And then once enrolled, one of our habitat technicians will reach out and schedule a site visit. And during the site visit, you as the participant would walk around your yard and talk to the habitat technician about what you're interested in. Maybe you want to grow food. And if that's the case, we can make recommendations for how to bring pollinators into your yard so that you can grow more food. Or maybe you have a lot of standing water on a certain part of your property. We can talk to you about what native plants might do a really good job of absorbing that water. During the site visit, the technician will hand over a resource packet, which includes lots of resources like posters so that you can learn to ID native plants and invasive weeds, as well as handouts and coupons. We have coupons for nurseries that sell native plants and so forth. After the site visit, the technician will send a customized site report that will lay out the current conditions of your property and then some specific recommendations for removing any invasive weeds that are there, which native plants would do well on your property. Also recommendations around stormwater management, very specific to your property because every property has a different thing going on with stormwater management. Wildlife stewardship, this is usually more focused on what the participant is interested in, and then how to reduce or eliminate the use of pesticides. And participants also get an in-progress sign when they first get that site visit. After that, we've kind of handed off our initial packet of resources, and then the participant gets busy implementing the recommendations that we provided. We provide a lot of ongoing follow-up afterwards. We provide a phone call 6 months after the site visit to check in, see how things are going, find out what kind of questions or concerns have come up. And then we send out an email every 6 months, kind of checking in as well. Participants can also get a follow-up consultation over the phone or in person. And then we have newsletters and other kinds of ongoing resources as well. Once the participant's ready for certification, we send out a volunteer who we train. We have a cluster of about 30 volunteers that go out and do certification visits. That helps us keep our costs down, and it's also a great way to engage folks who want to give back in the community. And after they get certified, we send a packet of benefits, and then certification is good for 3 years, at which point they can renew their certification. And so you all, as members of a sustainability group, I thought would be interested to know just kind of how we feel our program is really making an impact through cleaner rivers, by helping folks reduce the use of pesticides, planting native plants, which make a huge difference. Also biodiversity, both in terms of plants and in terms of wildlife, as well as climate change. We really encourage people to plant trees and care for the ones that they already have, as well as clean air. We talk about things like replacing gas mowers with electric mowers, that kind of thing, to help cut down on use of gasoline. And then we are also really into building community. We're always trying to find new ways to help participants engage with each other and build community. So who can participate in the program? Anyone who is like single family residences under 1 acre, but also community sites of any size. So this includes apartment complexes, churches, businesses, schools, and more. We have about 500 or so community sites in the program. And when folks are going for certification, they can either, they usually get started at the kind of entry level certification, which is silver. And then once they're there and they recognize, oh man, this is really working, I'm seeing more birds in my yard, they can take a little bit further action and get certified at the gold level. And then if they're really gung-ho, they can move on up to platinum. So they have to do a little bit more each time. But we try to make entry pretty doable. So silver is can be relatively easy to get to depending on the site. For some folks, it's much harder if they have large amounts of ivy or blackberry. Speaking of, I'm going to go through the 5 elements of the program. So these are the things that we talk to our program participants about: removing aggressive weeds or invasive weeds, depending on the term that you prefer. So the photo on the left is a property that has a lot of Himalayan blackberry on it. This is one of the plants that has been identified by local ecologists as being harmful to our ecosystem. So we encourage people to take that out and instead plant native plants, which is what you see there on the right. So planting with native plants, on the left, you can see here a couple of yards that aren't really doing a whole lot for the ecosystem. And then the 4 photos on the right are example photos of folks who are in the program. And these yards all look pretty fancy. Honestly, I very rarely see yards that are this fancy. Usually they're more like yards on the left where like a corner has been turned into a dedicated native plant area. So it doesn't have to be fancy. It can be super simple. The whole point is just getting more native plants in the ground, really. And then reducing or eliminating pesticide use. So on the left, you see a sign where someone's applied pesticides, and then we're kind of pointing down to how that eventually makes its way into the closest waterway. And you see kind of some green algae there that's developed. So pesticides and other chemicals really have a negative impact on water quality and the ecosystems in our waterways. Particularly amphibians are really sensitive to pesticides. So turtles and salamanders and frogs and so forth. I don't think a turtle is an amphibian, but it also is harmed. And then on the right are healthy waterways. And this is what we are helping to try. This is what we're encouraging folks to help us get to. For wildlife stewardship, there's a menu of options. So folks get to choose which of these they want to undertake. And then they need to do 1 for silver certification, 2 for gold, and 3 for platinum. I find that with this, folks try to do as much as they can because they can see the benefits to each of them. Similarly, for stormwater management, they get to choose 1 of these for silver, 2 for gold, and 3 for platinum, but usually they're trying to do as many as they can. And you can find the certification criteria on our website at backyardhabitats.org if you want to see the document in its entirety, which lists all of this and more. We also find a lot of benefit in partnering with community groups. So these are a few of our partners. We are always looking for new community groups to work with. We find that that really helps us reach certain communities that the program doesn't always reach without creating these relationships. So if you happen to know of any groups in West Linn that you think might be interested in working towards some of these components, I would love to hear about that. So here's what we've accomplished in West Linn to date. So this is over the years that we've worked in West Linn. We have 174 participating households. We're getting at least 30 new enrollments every year. We have 39 certified properties, and it does normally take folks 1 to 5 years, sometimes 7. That's how long it took me at my last place because I had some things that took a long time to work on. And that's why there's kind of the difference between in progress households and certified properties there. And then we do track how many trees and shrubs folks have planted, but we only do that at the time of certification. So we are missing data on how many plants have been planted by folks who are working on getting certified. So what we know is that at least 2,000 native trees and shrubs have been planted, but likely many more from all the other folks who are still working towards certification. And so between these participants, there has been about 60 acres of restored land in West Linn through the program. Here is a map of all the participants in West Linn, which is fun to look at when you look at like Mary S. Young Park and the different parks and green spaces throughout the city. It's kind of neat to see how close you get, but it's really spread out. So it's nice to see that folks throughout the city are learning about the program and have been inspired to sign up. And so one thing I just want to put out there is that we have been collaborating on some outreach, like Greg inviting us to join for the educational series. And then we are going to be at the Earth Day event this Saturday. Bethany's going to be there tabling. So that's really wonderful, but we are also open to other ideas. Like we noticed that you all were having an Arbor Day event this year, and if it would make sense for us to join that effort next year, we would love to do that. We also will often table at farmers market, so don't know if you ever have a table there or think that that would be a good idea, but that's one idea. We also sometimes send out mailers to residents to encourage them to sign up, and then we're open to other ideas as well. And then, of course, here's my pitch to sign up. If you're interested, no pressure, genuinely. This may not be your thing, but if you are, please do sign up because it really is fun to kind of see this in person, how the program works. And this is a picture of Sandy, who lives in West Linn and recently got certified.
Cool.
All right, and then this is just some photos and quotes of folks who've been in the program. So this seemed like a good time to open it up for questions.
Good. Thank you, Susie, and welcome, Victoria.
Thank you. I'm here in a restaurant, so I'm going to stay muted. It's really noisy.
Okay, good enough. So do people have any questions for Susie?
Couple questions, Susie. First off, thanks for sharing that. It was really informative. And one question is, does the size of your yard, is that, you know, like if you have, I have kind of a smaller yard, but I mean, it's okay size, but it's just, there's not a lot of room. But is there a certain size you're looking for building habitat, or can it be a small yard?
Oh, it can absolutely be a smaller yard. Yeah, I think, yeah, we encourage everyone to sign up, regardless of how small or large it is. Although we aren't able to visit residential properties over 1 acre. So that's our only size limit, is if it's over 1 acre, that becomes a real challenge for us for multiple reasons.
Sure.
And it's often better to then refer them to the Soil Water Conservation District. Because the support they need is usually going to be a little greater than what we can provide. But no, even small spaces can make a really big difference. And I've been to site visits where people have done quite a bit with a small space. And yeah, I think yeah, no size restriction there.
Okay,
there's always room. There's always room to help support the ecology.
Yeah, when we moved here a couple of years ago from Bend, Oregon, and we were amazed at all the bird wildlife nearby, and even in our small backyard, we'd see a lot of hummingbirds and stuff. So,
Absolutely.
and then other question, I don't know if you already answered this, but are you going to share that PowerPoint with us? Is that something that we can just refer to, or?
I'm happy to share that. Yeah,
Right.
definitely. If I send that as a PDF, would that work?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
If you want to send it to me, Susie, I can just send it to everybody else.
Yeah, that would
Okay.
really be helpful. I can also
Sure.
take it to the school and talk about it.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd like to say something before my dinner comes. I'm in Quilcene, Washington. That I have a very small yard and I'm now certified platinum.
Oh, wow.
And we just had a yellow-rumped warbler show up for the first time in 30 years that I've lived there.
Oh, that's nice.
So
So
yeah,
cool.
so even
That's
a small,
wonderful.
small yard will change habitat and you'll see many more wild animals. And the other thing I wanted to say was when you said any other communities to work with, I'm thinking about the community garden. While we don't gather very often as a group, there is communication with that. And so you and I could talk about that in another place or time, but there are 60 gardeners, people who are passionate about gardening. So it's a real possibility that we could make a connection there.
That sounds great. That would be wonderful. Yeah.
So
If they're already gardeners, that might be an easy sell.
Yeah, so I'm going to mute now, but I just wanted to say those two things to everybody. And thank you
Thank you,
so much
Victoria.
for coming tonight. This is really
Yes,
great.
yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Looks like I've been muted here. First of all, thank you for coming to speak with us tonight. I've had my yard, had the initial visit, and it was wonderful having somebody, walk through the property and, just have a conversation about what's possible and what we can do here. The packet that gets handed out is just chock full of really excellent information. And I believe the Warbler is a publication that gets sent out as well. It's like I don't know if it's quarterly or monthly, but the Audubon Society sends you a birding publication, and it's just a really excellent resource.
Yeah.
And further to Dan's question, if I'm not mistaken, the tiers of certification are tied not to the size of your yard, but the percentage of your property that you dedicate to
Yes.
creating habitat. So you can have a postage stamp, and if you dedicate, I think 5% is the silver
Yeah.
tier.
Yeah.
So that's how they handle being inclusive with respect to people of different property sizes.
That's right. Yeah, it's the square footage that is planted with native plants as well as the canopy layers. And so for platinum certification, it's 5 canopy layers are required. So that can be the most challenging thing with smaller sites, is just if there's not already a large canopy native tree. But I've seen it happen, and Doug firs can fit in pretty tight spaces. Sometimes people want that and sometimes they don't, but yeah, it can actually be easier to get certified with a smaller yard. Yeah. But thank you, Mike. Yeah, I think when I first signed up for the program way before I got hired on, the site visit made a big difference to me because I just felt really overwhelmed. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what to do. I knew I wanted to do something beneficial that would benefit wildlife, but I didn't know how to do it. So yeah, I think it makes a huge difference to folks when they have someone come out and have an actual conversation in person with them. It's a pretty good service.
I have one follow-up question as well. Is there any discussion about adding on the ability to utilize like adjacent easement for participation in the program? Like on our property, we have access to a lot of easement that we're more than willing to and able to plant things into. But as I understand it, nothing in an easement actually counts towards the certification.
That's a great question, and there can be some complexities there, but generally I would say the way we view easements is similar to the way that we view the right-of-ways, like the planting strips, where often in the planting strips, which is between the sidewalk and the street, there's often a stretch that is grass or maybe there are trees in there. and it's owned by the city because it's right of way. And so when folks naturescape those areas, either the planting strip or an adjacent easement, we usually will kind of consider that extra credit. So it can count the square footage of the area that you naturescape can kind of count towards your certification. It can get a little tricky because easements vary, but that's kind of as a general rule. That's usually the way that they turn out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Good. Well, thank you very much, Susie. Really appreciate the information and the program. It adds a lot to the community. So thank you for joining us. Feel free to stay with us if you like, but you probably have other things that are happening this evening as well. But thank you for your work.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I am taking my mom out of town tomorrow, so I'm going to hop off and start packing. But it was really nice to meet everybody. Have a good evening and rest of the week.
Good.
Thanks for joining us.
Good meeting.
Thank you.
Safe travels. Good. Well, moving on in the agenda, there were a number of kind of member reports just on with regard to things that people said that they're going to be working on that I wanted to give us a chance to review. Charity is, of course, over in Yakima, as I said, but it seems as though the Earth Day event is moving forward. We'll probably have about a dozen, maybe a little bit more, number of people or groups participating on Saturday. And we'll see how many people actually turn up, but I'm hopeful that we'll have a nice group. And I know Dan and Mike and I will all be there doing different things. And Terry Shoemaker will be there as well. Some students from the high school, Tualatin Riverkeepers. You've probably seen the flyer, but with luck, that will work pretty nicely. Ranjini, I want to give you a chance to just chat about the status of the dashboard research and any development. Where do things stand with that right now?
That's great. I did create one with respect to Oregon. I tried to find data for Westland community. I did reach out to Alex, but then he shared the survey details of Westland, but I couldn't get a chance to connect with him further to get the more data. So what I did was I would like to share the link that I've created. I think I'll post it as a question. If you can you check the link, or I can also share my screen and quickly walk you through what I have done if you have time.
Do you think it'd just take a couple of minutes?
Yeah, I would to give you an overview of what I have done. It would be better with the visualization of what to show what exactly I'm trying to talk about here.
Good.
Okay. If the link could be shared with everyone, I think that would be great too, because I think I'm unable to share my screen.
You know,
I think the chat feature has been disabled.
oh yeah, because I think
Okay.
Dylan said that he was going to have to leave after about a half an hour to get to another meeting. So
Okay,
he's probably
perfect.
unable to kind of facilitate that. But what you could do is send me the link.
Okay, I would
I'll send it out
share
to
the
everybody
link
else.
with you. So what I've done is to give you an overview of what I've done. I try to take Oregon's information and try to create a story out of it. What is the focus areas with the latest biennial report of 2022. It was about 65 pages. I wanted to collate the information, and I took the data from the US energy profile and tried to collate all of it with respect to Oregon, and try to create a dashboard of it, which talks about, gives an overall idea if someone wants to understand what's going on with respect to Oregon, or, with respect to how much energy are we spending. That gives idea about the energy consumption with compared to US, and for the last 2 years, how are we progressing?
Mm-hmm.
And along with that, there was a good, project or a dashboard being created with respect to zero emission vehicles. Now that we are talking more about zero emission vehicles and the electricity, a comparison as of November 2022 was available, which gives about in particular to Oregon, how many vehicles are electrically powered, and how in each county wise, how what is the population, and how many people own electric vehicles, and that kind of a data we can easily find out from there. So I've combined the useful resources from different places and combined it as one story. So when you walk through that story, you get an overview of perspective of how Oregon is progressing with respect to energy efficiency, or with respect to electric powered vehicles or savings. Or suppose you would like to get an information about library that's around, because that's a place where most of the information gets collected, stored, and we can know about a community well based on the library that we have. So that is also one more information I would want to bring along. So when you click on the link, it takes you through different tabs, which walks you right from the energy till the library.
Great. Thank you. We'll be really interested to
Yeah.
see it.
Yes, so that is something, because I wanted to particularly focus with Westland, but then Alex suggested that, getting that information needs permissions, and I need more data
Yeah.
also accessible for it to go and work with it. So I wanted to start with understanding the overall picture of the state and then try to go in depth.
Right. No. And I can imagine going from the state to the county and just seeing like what information might be available from the county and then
Exactly.
down into
So
Westland.
I would like to take this as an ongoing process. As and when I get more information, I would want to keep building on it.
Great. Great. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's good.
Thank you.
Victoria, can you participate now, or is the food ended up in your plate on your table?
Just got the food.
You did. Okay. I was going to have you report on the right-of-way rules. After, let us know when you are ready, and then we can just have you interject that later on in the meeting.
Okay. All right, will
If you
do.
want to talk about, I don't want your food to get cold though.
No,
So,
it's not. It's just that it's so complicated that I haven't got my grip on it.
okay.
That's my answer is essentially, if you do anything with the right of way, then that's fine, go right ahead. You can build sheds on it if you want to. You can garden in it if you want to. But as soon as the city needs it, they take it.
Yeah.
And you cannot get permission ahead of time. So that's my understanding of it, which is pretty vague. But I'm hearing from across the table here that that's correct.
Okay.
So it's if this is too noisy, I can step outside.
Oh, no, it's we're hardly hearing any of the background noise. So it's just
Okay, good. All right.
good. Good. Well, that's useful to know. A little discouraging, but not surprising.
Right. I will add that I'm been emailing with Ken Warner, who is head of Parks and Rec, to set up a time to talk about creating another community garden, because there are 17 people on the waiting list for the current community garden, and that's a 2-year list.
Uh-huh.
And that's just tells me it's time to move. And so I'm going to do what I can to get that going.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Excellent.
All right. Yeah.
So I think Mike already spoke about our meetings with Scott and Lou. And I was going to say just a little bit about the presentation about EVs that has been scheduled for the library on May 24th at 11 o'clock. So all of the information about that has been given to Dylan, and he'll post it on the city website after the Earth Day event. So it's a little bit closer to the time.
So that's a Wednesday at 11 a.m.
The 24th, if it's a Wednesday, yes.
Just to ask, is there any concern about people being able to attend that?
I asked about it, and they said that they've actually been pretty lucky in being able to get enough people to make it worth holding during the day. And actually, with the library, they're closed after 6 o'clock anyway. So to use the library meant having to come at that point. So with luck, again, we'll see what happens with that.
Okay.
I also was successful in encouraging Lisa Adato from the Lake Oswego Sustainability Network to come to our May 18th meeting to just share information about the work that they have been doing. And I mentioned being at their resource fair. They've been going for like well over a decade and have been able to be quite successful in kind of achieving kind of a number of kind of valuable things for the city of Lake Oswego. So I thought it'd be really interesting and useful for us to talk with her, and then just think about how we might be able to collaborate more with that organization as well. So those are my reports. Let's move on to Dan's letter for ODOT and see like whether people have any additional suggestions given your review of it, and whether or not we want to go ahead and send it to ODOT representing the position of the SAB.
And before we hear from everybody, if anybody has any comments, I did receive from 3 of you suggestions of edits, primarily just, like typos and things. This was a rough draft, so I welcome that. I made those corrections, so thank you all for that. And just for everybody, if you have or haven't had a chance to review it, basically the premise of the letter is, stating that we're concerned about the traffic diversion that's going to come off of primarily Stafford Road exit and come through Borland Road down Willamette Falls Drive. And with that substantial traffic diversion, the studies are showing that it's going to have 3 specifics. There's adverse environmental impact, potentially with increased localized air pollution right there along that corridor of our local highway. Also noise pollution as well from increased traffic. Adverse economic impact, potentially being with our historic Willamette district, with all the pedestrians. So there's concern about that. And then finally, safety issues with the new Athey Creek Middle School and the 2 elementary schools along both highways as well. Again, it's all related, kind of swirling around that increased traffic. But so that's kind of the way I tailored the letter, but certainly willing to, make changes. And I know, Craig, you had a few just good ideas as well, but so I'll just throw that out there.
So Victoria, Mike, or Ranjini, after having read the letter, do you have any suggestions or concerns about it? Ideally, since tomorrow is the final day for kind of sharing public testimony, we need to make a decision this evening about whether or not we support the letter and want to send it on its way.
I do support the letter.
Yeah.
And I feel like I sent Dan a note saying that I felt like everything was pretty strong except saying the problem with the COVID had affected the businesses in Willamette. And shoot, they affected everybody all over the world. So I
did remove that. Yeah.
Yeah. That was really my only content, except for clarification of the last paragraph. But I just know I think it's fine otherwise, and I'm for it.
I'm in agreement. I thought the letter touched on the main concerns and articulated them in an understandable way, and I'd be just fine signing off on the current version.
Yeah.
Ranjini?
I'm fine too. Yeah.
You're fine?
I cannot comment so much because I'm totally new out here. So, but otherwise, the letter, I support the letter.
Dan, did you say that Greg had offered some additional?
Yeah, and real quick first, Victoria, you had a content question related. I had mentioned bus on shoulder access. That's actually a concept where when there's a large shoulder built on the side of a highway, buses, public transit is allowed to use that during high traffic
Oh, okay.
periods. Essentially, you know, it's encouraging people to ride public transit so they're not sitting in traffic. They can like just scoot on by. So that's where that term comes from. But
Thank you.
yeah. And then, yeah, Craig, did you want to touch a little bit on, you know, I think you were talking about maybe suggesting you know, like complete, I mean, I don't know. I don't think any of us are excited about the idea of tolls, right? And so I was kind of struggling with this on, because they've already had public comment period. I think it was back in like August, September of last year related to 5 different proposals. They've narrowed it down to 2. And now this one's particularly related to the environmental assessment. So
Okay.
that's why I was focused primarily just on, you know, the choices that they've already developed, you know, the impact that it would have. And then, you know, I tried to list a few suggestions of like, hey, if you really are planning on diverting, you know, a 20 to 30% increase in traffic on our highways, that we need more mitigation, you know, such as you know, the bus to shoulder access, you know, better pedestrian bikeways and crosswalks and things like that. I don't know, but that's why I was kind of avoiding getting into the whole concept of like we're just against the tolls, but
Uh-huh.
rather focus more on the mitigation of the diverted traffic. But
Uh-huh.
well,
Yeah, I think my sense was just that the mitigation efforts were not really going to solve the problem.
I know, and
And
especially with the air pollution, right?
yeah,
So then
and also
so
in terms of the amount of traffic in downtown Willamette, it's hard to see how that wouldn't have a pretty deleterious impact upon upon business, particularly during the periods during the day when there's going to be a lot of traffic coming through town.
mhm.
But I think I'm perfectly happy leaving it as it is. So I appreciate your effort to put it together, and it certainly raises the issues as Mike says, and will hopefully give ODOT something to chew on.
Yeah,
That they're pretty much just kind of moving ahead, regardless of what cities and counties want. Uh, and it is unfortunate, uh, but I suspect there's probably not much we can do about it.
well, actually,
It's good.
so there is a growing movement to put it on the ballot.
Mhm.
So, and I've heard that they're really close to having that signature
Really?
level. So, I think we might be there where we actually can do something about it. But I mean, stay tuned, right? That's still in the works. But
There is Greg, I forgot to mention this to you and Lou when we were in the coffee shop at the Willamette Coffee House. They had the sign up sheet for that ballot initiative.
Oh, really? I didn't see that. Wow.
Yeah, I meant to mention it, but we sat down and got right to chatting, and it just kind of evaporated.
I will stop by there tomorrow and sign it. Good, good. Well, I really appreciate your willingness to write it. And um, I guess, does somebody want to make a motion to accept the letter and send it off to ODOT?
Sure, I move to approve the letter for transmission to ODOT.
Okay,
I second it.
Victoria seconds. All in favor?
I
Aye. Are you okay?
I,
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
real quick, one thing that an issue that Dylan emailed me right before the meeting, and I forgot to mention, is he said that we cannot use the City of Westland letterhead that I had on there. But he suggested maybe if do we have a sustainability letterhead or not?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
I
I was disappointed on that. But
I think I'm trying to figure out how to actually sign it. I guess you could sign it for the Sustainability Advisory Board.
Yeah, I've seen that where other letters came in. I've reviewed other organizations' letters and other municipalities, and oftentimes it'll be one person signing, but it'll say like on behalf of the board or something. So I'm totally willing to do that if you all are okay with that.
Yeah. And
I'm okay with that.
in that situation, do they include the names of the people who were like on the board?
They do, yeah. So it's listed. So what I think I'll do is I'll make these edits, and then if it's all right with you all, should I just do a final email in the morning and everybody just give their okay, or should we just?
I would check with the people who weren't here to
Yeah.
say yes or no
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah, so I'll send that email out tomorrow morning. I have till 4 p.m. to submit
Okay.
it, and I can submit it online.
Good,
So,
good.
Dan, can I just give you my verbal okay right now?
okay, sure.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Was that
I'm all right with
Victoria?
that as well.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is just a discussion about the top 1 or 2 no or low cost recommendations to the city council. I kind of went through the rankings that I got from people who had sent them in, and it turned out that the ones that were the highest included replacing cars and trucks with EVs, and then also let's see, there was one other one. Oh, I think it had to do with the water systems, and so both of those are actually things that were part of the recommendations that we made last year in December to the city council. So I think we can move on to some of the other items that were on that particular list. And one of them in particular was changing the contract to with the trash hauler to provide compost pickup, which we had talked about last year. And it seems as though that might be something worth doing some research on to try to get more information about what those possibilities are. And I would suggest talking with Lisa Adato when she comes next month about that, because Lake Oswego has been able to actually implement that kind of compost pickup in that city. And if we could find out more from her about how they did it and how the system works, that might provide a kind of a means for kind of moving forward with that. Does that seem like a kind of a reasonable thing to try to do?
I'd like to pursue that for sure. I did want to, I guess, mention, I think a while back we did have a representative from Westland Refuse and Recycling
Uh-huh.
attend one of our board meetings to discuss this, and they had done some preliminary study for the city in order to put together, I believe it was a price estimate for adding the service. So the city should be in possession of some information that they've been given by the hauler.
Okay.
That would be, I don't think that was ever transmitted to the board for review though. So maybe you or I could reach out to Dylan, see if there's anybody who still knows where that is. But we have a starting point that we got months back, and we could check into that to see where things stood at that point.
Yeah.
And I think this Saturday is an opportunity, and I know we're not getting a random sample of people, but to discuss that with people and just let members of the community know that we're interested in trying to get the city to implement this, and to encourage them to share that with the people that they're in contact with too.
Right. And we might, I think one of the things that was part of that initiative was kind of figuring out some way to educate our fellow citizens about the value of moving this direction. So I think one of the things that we could think about would be writing up something that could go into the tidings and perhaps having something that would go out in the newsletter that the city sends out electronically.
Yeah.
So
Is Terry still publishing an article in the Tidings every month?
I haven't seen it on a monthly basis, but I could ask Terry whether he'd be willing to do that.
Okay, because I know he was very much into that idea, and he's already got a presence in that, so that might be an avenue for us to leverage.
Yeah. So Ranjini or Dan, do you have any thoughts, or Victoria, any thoughts about how to move forward on that particular initiative?
No, not really.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add on that either. But
Have Dan, in Bend or any of the other communities you've lived in, has there been compost pickup?
so when you say, can you articulate when you say compost pickup, you're talking about like you're not talking about like yard debris, right?
No,
You're
I'm
just
talking
talking
about
about
food scrap.
food. We did not have that in Bend.
Uh-huh.
I wish we did, but so yeah, I'm just not familiar with it. It wasn't offered, unfortunately. I think it's a great thing to, push forward. It sounds like Lake Oswego has some potential, ideas for us. So I think we're on the right track with that.
Yeah, and I had thought that that the compost was actually separated from the yard debris in other communities, and I was incorrect on that. So actually, in Portland and on Lake Oswego, the yard debris includes the compostable material as well. So, so I think just kind of learning more about how it happens, and like again, maybe inviting in the trash hauler to meet with us after we've gotten the information that Mike suggested, and after we learn more from Lisa about how to move forward with it. But really seeing this as one of the things we might really, try our best to see, happen this year, or at least get it as a significant recommendation at the end of the year for the city council. One of the other items that that got a lot of interest was just an ordinance to control English ivy and other invasive species. And Mike discovered that there actually is an ordinance like that right now. It just is not being implemented. And could you say more about the ordinance that you discovered, Mike?
Yeah, let me see if I can't find it real quick. I found it a couple weeks back. Westland Code noxious weeds. All right, don't fail me now, Google. Essentially, it just says if you have invasive weeds on your property, anything that's a noxious weed, as designated by the Oregon, I think there's some name for it, Noxious Weed Control Board, that you're required to remove it.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that there is something in the way. Here it is, Municipal Code 5.470. So in the Westland website right-of-way maintenance page, they say to help keep our sidewalks and streets accessible to all and our city looking its best, the city's municipal code section 5.470 requires that residents maintain both their private property and any adjacent city right-of-way. In short, this means that weeds and grass must be kept to 10 inches or less in height, and trees, blackberry bushes, and other vegetation must be kept clear of adjacent sidewalks and streets. There are additional requirements that can be found here. I'm assuming this takes us to the code publishing page, so I'll have that go to 5.470, which says what? Weeds listed under any category in the noxious state list, not more than 8 inches. Yeah, here it is. No owner or person in charge of any property, improved or unimproved, shall permit noxious vegetation upon the property and the adjacent right-of-way. So the city has an ordinance, they just don't enforce it.
Okay.
And it may be a place to target is I know that there are one property in particular that jumps to my mind is there's a lot across Highway 43 from the entrance to Mary S. Young Park,
Mhm.
and it's just covered in ivy. And as long as I've lived here, there's just been a derelict sign in front of it saying that it's for sale. And so whoever the property owner of that happens to be, I mean, I think they bear responsibility for keeping that cleaned up so that it doesn't serve as a kind of a jumping off grounds for continued invasive problem in
Mhm.
Mary S. Young that many of our city's residents volunteer their time to help clear. So maybe we just ask the city to start enforcing the
Yeah.
ordinance.
Yeah, it sounds like just straight up enforcement issue,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
And if Dylan were here, I think that that's a question that we could ask of him. So maybe at our next meeting, or we could, when we're raising questions about some of these other issues, we could ask Dylan again about that one as well and just try to learn about that. The last thing I'd like to bring up tonight with regard to these initiatives is the one that was regarding proposing an amendment to the comprehensive plan and building codes to require new homes and apartments to have the capacity to support heat pumps and charge EVs, including apartment parking spaces. So my sense is that that one will probably require a little bit of research. Is there anybody who would be willing to just kind of investigate how that has played out in other communities and how other people kind of are addressing that particular issue so that we might be able to use language from codes in other communities as to present to the city council?
I'd be willing to look around for that. I believe we raised this issue in the course of our original set of recommendations regarding the community development plan, and I believe Dylan. I'm struggling to remember what he had to say about it, but it might have been something along the lines of the new rulemaking regarding the Climate Friendly and Equitable Communities Act might actually take care of most of this on its
Okay.
own. But well, I'll dig on that and I'll correspond with Dylan to see if he remembers any of that conversation that we had. I
Great.
guess yearish ago.
Yeah. So Mike will report back next month about that particular topic. Okay. Any other comments just about that list of initiatives? We can just, as Victoria said last month, we can just kind of work our way down that list and see how many of them we can actually move forward on. So Ranjini, Dan, or Victoria, anything else you would like to add?
No, and I'm afraid I have to start driving. So I
Okay.
might give an early goodbye.
Well, thank you for
Yeah.
joining us as you have. We appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Victoria.
Bye-bye to all.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Good luck getting there.
I don't have anything further to add.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Same here.
Okay, and again, just take a look at that list that I sent out and see if anything jumps out at you, for the next meeting, and the things that you would really like to focus in on. Want to move to the question about the Old Time Fair booth, as well as having a booth at the farmers market during the summer. Charity said that she would be happy to organize the booth at the farmers market. Are people interested and willing to kind of take responsibility for being at that booth? Let's say we go try to be up there once a month throughout the summer. Would folks be willing to spend an hour or two at the booth, just sharing information about the SAB and any initiatives that we think are important, or as Susie was saying, share information about backyard habitat, et cetera, other kinds of programs. So do you feel as though you would have the time to be able to do that?
I would be willing to
I
do
would.
1 or 2 hours a month. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep,
Yeah.
I'm happy to do that too.
Okay, and probably wouldn't have to. I think we were there, 3 or 4 times over the summer. That would be great, and it would be kind of a new way to actually reach out to the public. But so wonderful. Let's move forward with that. And similarly, like with the old time fair booth, um, anybody want to help kind of coordinate that?
I don't know what that would entail is the reason I'm hesitant.
Oh, last year, I know that Terry and I think Kim were there for a period of time. Mike and I were there for a few hours, and I think we just basically set up the booth on early Saturday afternoon, and we're there until about 5 o'clock. And we basically kind of shared information about the SAB. We were able to find some folks who were willing to demonstrate electric bicycles. So they were right next to the booth, and so people could come and try out an electric bicycle. So I think we could actually be much more systematic in terms of the kind of information that we gather and try to share this time around. Um, but it would again just take some planning. The city has a tent that we can use and tables. If they can find it, a banner that we had, and it more than anything else just means being willing to kind of arrange who is going to turn up when, and kind of set it up and take it down. So it's something that if people are willing to do, we can just kind of hold off on kind of more specific organizational questions until May. Um, Mike, do you have any thoughts about how to make this happen and perhaps have a little bit more impact than we did last summer?
Yeah, I don't think, well, first of all, I think a lot of people who approached the booth didn't know that we weren't like representatives of the city. And I
Uh-huh.
think that was like the tent, was emblazoned with like City of West Linn. And so,
Right.
people would come up and ask us questions that we really didn't have the ability to answer. And I think focusing a little bit on just brainstorming ways that we can like attract people to just come talk to us in the first place
Mhm.
might be a good thing to talk about. I know people sure liked the magnet, the fridge magnet, reminding them how to sort their recyclables. Um, so I guess we should have some of those on hand. Um, but yeah, we should think a little bit about what kinds of information we want to have available to them, and what messages we want to try to convey to them. We want support for the composting idea. What else? What else would we like the community to be more invested in?
Okay. Any other thoughts, Dan or Ranjini?
I would be more than willing to spend an hour or two at the booth. I'm hesitant to volunteer to organize the booth. I just don't know the logistics, and I'm fairly strapped on time.
Okay. Yeah, that's something that I can help with. I know I'm busy that entire week before, so would just need to have somebody be able to kind of handle this, setting it up and the rest.
Yeah, so I certainly willing to, duck out for an hour from my family and go help set up and then
Okay.
man the booth, for an hour or two on the weekend. But yeah, I just don't, know like who to call and all of that as far as organization
Sure.
goes. Yeah.
Right. I think we're all in the dark about that because other folks did it as well in the past. So.
Yeah.
Mike and I just turned up.
Yeah,
So
we can see what
Right.
Terry and Kim had to do in order to make it happen. And
Yeah, right. So yeah, talk with Terry and Kim.
yeah, I think in the absence of any volunteers for that, it probably falls to to you and I, Greg.
Yeah, I think that you're right. So good. And I'm glad that the charity is, willing to step in and do the organization for the farmers market. Um, there were a bunch of items on our notes from the October brainstorming session that I thought people could potentially address individually. But since the numbers are declining and the people who had kind of brought those ideas up back in October are no longer here, I think I'll wait until May to raise those again. But I did want to just bring up an issue that Terry had mentioned to me when I saw him at the film showing back in February. And that was, he was really interested in trying to rename the Sustainability Advisory Board to being the Sustainability and Resilience Advisory Board. And I wanted to see how Dan and Ranjini kind of feel about that. I've been really interested in trying to support efforts to create more neighborhood resilience, particularly with regard to emergencies. So like when there are ice storms or fires or in the case of flooding, or if there were an earthquake in particular, the place that people are going to get their support will be largely from the neighbors who are immediately around them. And there's been a major effort in Portland and other surrounding communities to try to kind of solidify those neighborly relationships in a way that will make it more likely that people be able to actually provide that support when needed. And West Linn actually had a program called Mapping Your Neighborhood, which I'll be talking about at the booth that I've got, or the table that I've got on Saturday. And that involved really getting to know the kinds of skills that your neighbors had, family members, tools that people were willing to share, sharing information about just the location of the shutoff valves for electricity and water and gas, and just being organized so that people would be able to kind of provide support in case of one of those emergencies. And so I think Terry's feeling was that there's such a close relationship between sustainability and resilience that it would make sense to try to link those two together in our name and present ourselves as a group that's really kind of grappling with those two linked issues, particularly as climate change becomes more and more of an issue in all of our lives. And so with that brief overview, we don't need to make a decision tonight, but I wanted to at least start the conversation and see if you have any thoughts about that. And Mike, join in as well, because you've been part of some of these earlier conversations.
Yeah, I think it's honestly, I think it's a good idea. When I think about both sustainability and resilience, it conjures notions of being prepared for things that you don't want to happen. We don't want climate change to happen, but we need to be prepared for it to do so. We need to try to prevent that, and it's no different when considering other natural disasters or man-made disasters. We need to be able to handle unfortunate circumstances and support each other during the course of those. And they just seem part and parcel with each other. I think it makes perfect sense to kind of extend the bounds of what this board talks about a little bit to include more of those things. I mean, if the earthquake is going to happen at some point, and it might be when we're around, and if the city doesn't have some body talking about this, then I think that's to the detriment of the people who live in this community.
So, yeah, I agree with Mike as far as I like the idea of broadening our scope of what we focus on. I'm not, I don't know. I'm just thinking in my head of a different word than resilience. To me, when I first read it just makes me kind of wonder, like, what do they mean by that? I don't know if we could come up with a better word, but that's just my initial impression. But I love the idea, though, like you said, with climate change and like our recent heat dome and the ice storm and all of that. Like, I mean, there's we're going to see that more and more. So I do love that idea of broadening our focus, but yeah, just I don't know. I mean, I'm not like super excited about the word resilience, but
I think a phrase that like more people may be familiar with is emergency preparedness.
yes, yeah, like something like that. I don't know. So just something to think about over the next month. Like
Yeah.
we could have
I
2 or
agree.
3 different options of names or
Uh-huh.
something.
And I know the city council would probably need to be like the ones that bestow the new name upon the group,
Sure.
and
Right.
it'd be
Yeah.
good to have their their input and buy-in on this too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that maybe that conversation is one that we like have on deck for a meeting that Mary's able to participate in with us.
Yeah. And, it would have to be decided by them eventually, but, how we present it to them is like the issue that we need to work through and our kind of our
Yep.
rationale for doing so. Rongini, do you have any thoughts? You haven't been here. I don't think you were here for the heat dome or the ice storm, but these kind of major
Yeah.
events that just,
Right, and I did hear stories from Charity about her experience, how in the neighborhood she supported her, during those times where there was no power for a week.
right.
I think so. She did share her story with me, so I listened to it. But like you said, like the words, immediately what I was thinking is how is resilience and sustainable are interlinked. So
Mhm.
I did Google, and of course, yeah, what I got to know is like, can resilience be inclusive and sustainable? That is the question that we should think of.
Yeah.
And when you are saying is it like your main target is for emergency related purposes? How will this word be, thought of when you try to combine? So that is what I was trying to, do a background. So probably by next month when we have this discussion, I think we'll have a clear picture of, how to use the words.
Yeah. Yeah. No, good point. And I know that for me, a lot of it has to do with just building the kinds of social trust and the networking that really kind of lead people to feel comfortable drawing upon one another's support and
Exactly.
reaching out to folks who might otherwise be strangers if there weren't efforts to, in fact, try to draw people together. So, like the way that I set up my poster, like for Saturday, is that two of the panels will look at how to enhance social connection and then emergency preparedness in the middle. So it's like a combination of social connection and emergency preparedness is how I really think about sustainability. So uh, about really bringing those terms together. So let's just think about it more and kind of figure out how we can move forward with that if people feel as though it's something worth doing.
Yes,
Great.
Sounds great.
Good,
that's
good.
great.
So I guess just the last thing we needed to do in the process of taking notes and facilitating, I did not kind of crystallize into my mind like actions that we needed to be able to take between now and the next meeting. Can somebody kind of remind me of the action you're going to take? I know we're going to talk with Dylan about a number of different things, and I can find that in my notes. But other things that I know that Dan will be kind of finishing up the letter and sending that on. Ranjini is going to continue kind of working on the developing of the dashboard
Dashboards.
and send us the link for that. Um, were there other things that you two remember that you were going to include?
I'm going to be at the booth on Saturday along with Mike and you, Craig.
Yeah.
But um,
I'll be there on Saturday too.
Oh, you'll be
okay.
there on Saturday too? Great.
Yes.
And so the dashboard, Mike, were there other things that you were going to do as well?
Yeah, two things that I have jotted down for myself. One is to get in touch with Dylan to see if there's any of that documentation that Westland Refuse and Recycling sent over regarding their exploration of the composting service.
Uh-huh.
And the second was I am going to look around and see what there is regarding like code provisions to make it so that new construction is EV charging and heat pump friendly.
Great. No, that's excellent. Good. Well, thank you very much. I think for a useful and interesting and productive meeting. And I'll look forward to seeing everybody on Saturday.
Perfect. Yeah.
So,
All right. Thanks, everybody.
yes,
Bye.
thank you all. Take care.
Yeah. Good
Take
night.
care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Right.